So my name is Asia, and I have the pleasure and the opportunity of introducing these very well-educated, amazingly beautiful, wonderful ladies. And I actually asked them to just prepare a little intro for you. So I think if we could start with Pastor Shar, if you wouldn't mind, you can go first. And then we'll just kind of trickle down the line. So if you would just introduce yourself.
Yes. Hello, hi. I'm Pastor Shar, and my husband and I pastor the church here. We made 18 years in April doing this, so thanks for all my peeps out there, all the women that I love so much, love leading, and I guess that's it.
Short and sweet. Hi, I'm Wendy Muska, and it is so fun to be back at World Harvest tonight. I'm just telling you, I have missed you guys for sure. I told Shar it's like coming to hang out at my sister's house with all of her kids, and it's awesome. Thank you. It feels like a big family reunion for me, so I'm just really blessed to be here. So I'm a licensed professional counselor by trade, but I will just say that I think God taught me more in my own life to sit in a room and hear people's pain than anything I ever learned in a book. I'm the survivor of childhood sexual abuse and an alcoholic father and codependency and people pleasing and anxiety and depression, and I've had to course correct my life more than once. Abusive husbands, divorce, 2 teenage sons who are now full grown and amazing, and I have 2 daughters-in-laws and 2 granddaughters. So there is not much that comes into my office that God has not equipped me for. I think he just equips the called, right? Who he calls, he equips. I'm so thankful for that. So I'm excited to be here. I have no idea what's coming out of my mouth tonight, ladies. No clue. Everybody's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, whatever they ask, which could be real dangerous stuff. So.
All right, I'm going to try Pastor Shar's trick, put this on my chin. I'm Christy Gehring. My voice is a little hoarse because I was singing. This was amazing. This was really amazing. So I grew up in South Dakota. I always wanted to be a doctor. When I was 5 years old, I started watching Marcus Welby. Anyway, so I went to medical school in South Dakota, and then I came to Eau Claire. The intent in 1996 was to be here for 3 years to do my residency and then go back home, but God had other plans. And in 1999, I joined Family Health Associates with Dr. Ippel, and it was great. It was family medicine. I got to deliver babies. I went to the emergency room. I did, which I didn't like, but I did intensive care, went to nursing homes, the whole thing. It was quite amazing. But as time went on, I realized that traditional medicine was really good at acute care things. It could help something that was cut or fractured or, ruptured appendix, but it wasn't so good at chronic things. And I could see that people who were, having headaches or fibromyalgia or depression were suffering, and we didn't have much for tools. And I was frustrated. So long story short, God kind of took me on a little course, and he arranged for me to go to the Applying Functional Medicine to Clinical Practice course. It was a week-long course, and it opened my eyes to functional medicine. So functional medicine is root cause analysis. We're trying to figure out why there's a problem instead of just giving a pill to cover up the problem. So that's functional medicine. So in a nutshell, we try to give your body more of what it needs and take away the things that it doesn't need so that it can heal itself the way God designed it. So that's our goal, and it became clear in about 2016 that it wasn't going to work in conventional medicine anymore. So I ended up taking a leap of faith and opening up Sparrow Wellness Clinic in 2017. Sparrow stands for hope in Latin, so that's what we hope to do, give people hope. And he's been there with me every step of the way. There have been quite some learning lessons, we'll say, because I'm not a business person, but we've learned things and grown, and he's always helped us pay the bills, which is great. And in 2021, Dr. Robin, who's here, where are you, Robin? There she is. She joined the clinic. She was an answer to prayer. I was drowning. Literally, I was at home with COVID in September of 2020. 2021, not sure if I could keep going on because I was so swamped and it wasn't good. And she calls when I was sick and says, I heard about you and I was wondering if you might want another, physician. And I'm like, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. So from there, we added 2 nurse practitioners, and we have one of our lovely nurses is here, Melissa. And we've just got a great team. So God's been great. Through this all, my husband, Mark, has stood beside me. And I have a daughter, Rachel. She's 22. And in 11 days, she's going to graduate from college. So, yeah. I think that's enough about me. Moving on.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Brenda Kibola. I was raised in East Africa, in Nairobi, Kenya, and I came here for my undergraduate on scholarship, and was first in Ohio. That was an adjustment, coming to America for the first time, and then going to college classes. But God took me through that, and then went to medical school in New Hampshire, and then my residence in New York. And when you come to this country as a foreign national, after you're done with your training, you are posted to an underserved area to serve for 2 years. So in 2018, after I finished my psychiatry training in Manhattan, in New York, they posted me and my husband to Rice Lake, Wisconsin. And it was so different. But it was beautiful because we could go anywhere in 5 minutes. I remember we went to the grocery store 5 times the first day because we could. So, and it just has been a wonderful place for us, and we really felt that God called us here, and so we established a home. We have 3 young children, and it's been wonderful. We are placed here. I practice as a psychiatrist. I was working for Marshfield Clinic, and then I really just felt called by God to move out on my own, and He's really been retraining me. Much of what Dr. Gehring has really been going through, just retraining me on the body, the mind, the brain, on what more is out there for healing for His children. And it's been such a wonderful journey seeing people healed. So thank you for having me.
Hi, my name is Becky Polden, and I am from the Eau Claire Fall Creek area. Thank you. So for all of you who drove a ways, thank you. I am a licensed professional counselor and substance abuse counselor, and I work for Dr. Kibola in her Eau Claire location, and just come up to Rice Lake sometimes to visit and work in the office. So I do a lot of work with couples. I do trauma work, general mental health and addiction work. I've been married for 21 years. We have a little daughter and 2 sons in heaven waiting for us someday when we go to meet Jesus. So those of you ladies who've walked that, my heart is with you, or anything similar to that. So, and we have a little hobby farm with potbelly pigs and ducks and turkeys and chickens and 6 dogs. So, so I'm very happy to be here tonight with all you ladies. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, so much for being here. It really is such an honor to have you, all of your great brains, in the same room. I love it. So I just wanted to take a moment to pray, and then in an effort to get through all of our questions, we're just going to jump right in. I also wanted to let you know that if you have any questions that come to your brain throughout this panel, please text that number, and our wonderful Olivia, she's in the front row. Hi, Olivia. She's going to be monitoring those questions then sending them over to me. So at any time, if you have any questions, a follow-up question from one of the questions that was asked, feel free. I cannot guarantee that we're going to get to everything tonight, but we're going to do our very best to get through some stuff. So anyways, God, we just love you and we thank you so much for what you're going to do here tonight. God, we've been praying and we've been interceding for breakthrough. So I thank you, God, that this revelation from heaven, from all of these panelists, God, it will impact us and change the course of our lives forever. God, I thank you for the freedom that we will leave with tonight. And God, I just ask that you deposit something inside of us, something that changes us from the inside out. We love you and we praise you in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Amen. So I am going to jump in with Pastor Shar first, if that's okay. You can open us up here. And I decided we were going to keep it kind of easy to start, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty a little bit later tonight. So for our first question this evening, this person is wondering, how do you combat thoughts of fear when they enter your mind?
Nobody ever deals with fear, right? Just had on our intercession chat, somebody just posted in there how please pray against fear because everybody's been struggling with fear. And I thought, wow. I think one thing to realize as the body of Christ, that we have to really be on guard on what goes on in the world. Things in the atmosphere that are going on. You just got to go on the news. You probably shouldn't go on the news. You probably shouldn't watch any of that stuff. I think most anxiety and fear comes from what we put into our mind, the things that we're watching, the things that we're listening to. Depending on who you're listening to, you think that the world is coming to an end and everybody's going to starve to death, you know? So I think number one to combat fear is check to see what you are allowing into your ear gate and your eye gate, what you're listening to, what you're watching, what you're reading, who you're hanging around with, what's coming out of your mouth, what are the things that you're saying. Sometimes we actually, with our own words, can actually put word curses on us, you know, where you're talking about things. But I think also that fear, I believe, is a lack of trust. I think especially as believers, if you are a child of God, then fear, the Bible says that fear is not from God. So if we're struggling with fear, I believe a lot of times it could be a trust issue. What are you fearing? What is the thing that you're fearing? So what can you do is, what is the thing that you're fearing? And then can God be trusted in that area? 90% of the things we fear is look at the character of God. Is God good? Yes. Is God faithful? Yes. Is he sure? Yes. Is he a promise keeper? Yes. Is he a miracle worker? Yes. Okay, so when the thing that we're fearing, we find the character of God. And can we trust him? I really believe that fear is a trust issue. And what we're listening to and seeing and hearing, I really do.
Really, really good. We're going to move on to the next question here for Becky. Becky, how do you get yourself out of a rut, specifically when you know you are in one, but don't necessarily feel like you have the capacity to get out?
Thank you for that question, ladies. And feel free to jump in if anything tugs at your heart, ladies. So one of the things I think that I've learned throughout my life and as a counselor is there's so much opportunity and space to grow and heal if we're vulnerable. Meaning, a lot of times as women, we tend to tuck these things away into our heart and mind and soul, and we end up kind of heaping shame and guilt upon ourselves instead of reaching out to someone to say, hey, I'm really struggling right now, or I'm struggling a little bit or a lot of it. And some of us honestly don't have those people in our life yet that we can feel safe to do that with. So I encourage you to practice taking those vulnerability risks in small things first. And if you need to just reach out and talk on the phone to a stranger, like a counselor or a pastor or some support type network, start there if you don't have those people in your life yet, and have them help connect you to other people. But I think the first thing is just getting really honest with yourself that I'm in there and being brave and being vulnerable and trying to reach out in some small way. That would be my first suggestion.
Yeah, that's really good. Really, really good. For Dr. Christie, this question's for you. What's your best advice for someone who deals with migraines? This person has seen a neurologist, and the neurologist suggested shots to numb the nerves, but she doesn't like to cover up the issue, but likes to find the root cause, so that's perfect for you.
Well, migraines are very complex. There's many factors that play a role. One of the easiest things to do is just make sure you drink enough water. That is something that most of us don't drink enough of. So you take your body weight, you divide it in half, and you drink that amount in water. It should be filtered water, ideally. And you can count juice, although we don't recommend juice much, but you can count other things as well, like soups. There's many other things. The electrolytes are another thing, very simple. So if people have a migraine, we would recommend putting some sea salt on your tongue if you feel the migraine starting. If the migraine goes away, then take more salt, about 1/4 to a teaspoon of salt in some water. That can help. Magnesium is the other thing that can help. So if that doesn't work, you can try magnesium. Potassium also helps. There's so many things with migraines, though, so it can go from stress, and it can be a mechanical thing. It can be a hormone imbalance. Leaky gut is a good cause of migraines. So there's many, many factors, and you start with the basics, and then try and find someone to help you dig in and see what you're missing and what you need to remove.
It's good, very practical. Thank you. Dr. Brenda, how does a person figure out the root cause of people pleasing?
So I would say this is if you find that that is something you're struggling with, is to look at who you are trying to please the most. Identify that person and try to find similar people throughout your life that you have also tried to please the most, and then try to draw a pattern. People pleasing can come from different causes. One could be that you may have grown up in a household where the love was conditional. So if you do this, then you get love. If you clean up and do all the chores well, then you get love. Or people pleasing can also come from a place of being rejected and really working to get the approval first of your parents, and then if it doesn't happen, then you look outside your primary people to get the approval of others, because all of us are looking for approval, all of us are looking for acceptance, all of us are looking to belong in some way. Another cause of people pleasing could be trauma, where it has, people pleasing may have been the way that you learned how to keep things peaceful, to avoid conflict, and to not to stir the pot. And these things can work for a while as coping mechanisms in that situation, in that period, in that episode. But when it persists into now, today, and you're no longer in the situation, and you find yourself in that place where you are having a hard time speaking up for yourself, you're having a hard time drawing clear boundaries, it's really saying, do I feel accepted within myself? And the first person to really look at is to look at your relationship with God. Right? Because that is really your relationship with the Father will reflect a lot of your own personal relationships. And so when you're able to see, okay, what is happening from top to down, then you can also see what's happening horizontally as well. So, okay.
Good stuff. Our next question is for Miss Wendy. So this is kind of a long one.
Of course.
Of course. You can handle it. It says, I've always been an independent person, probably to a fault, but I've noticed in my marriage recently it shifted, and I feel like my emotions and daily function is affected by his. His moods affect me and what I do. His attitude affects how I respond and interact with him, and other things. It's never been intentional, but a gradual shift. How do I start to move out of this pattern?
The hard thing about hearing these questions as a therapist is I have 10 other questions to ask whoever wrote the question. But we're not going to go there. This is more like kind of advice giving, sort of, in some ways. So, they gave me this question ahead of time, and I really thought about it. For one, it's like, welcome to femininity, right? Because in the feminine, as women, we were created by God to respond to the man we choose to love. That's truth, right? Like, we are meant to be his helper. And so when you're in that masculine, feminine energy in an intimate relationship, I think women can be different in workplaces and in friendships where they're not in that same dynamic. But when you're in that relationship with your spouse, you're intended by God to respond to him. Men really do set the barometers for their home, which if you've ever heard me speak about men, I will say all day long what an awesome responsibility they have. Because they will impact their wives' emotions, their children. A man is going to take his wife and his children wherever he leads them, really. And once a woman gives her heart to a man, it is really hard to take it back. So most of us hang in there for a really, really, really long time. And if you've ever been divorced, it's like a death. It's awful. I think it's the 6th level of hell myself. It's horrible. So the fact that you're responding to your husband's mood and affect, welcome to being a girl. But what do you do about that, right? That becomes a question then, is his mood dysregulated? Is it not appropriate for what's going on in life? Does he have some toxic relationship patterns, communication patterns? What's going on for him? Can you talk to him about how he's affecting you? Does he understand what leadership looks like? Because that's what it looks like to lead somebody. I mean, if you walk into work and your boss is crabby, it's not a great day for everybody, right? So that's leadership. So to me, and I'm a very independent person, and a gradual shift to starting to being more responsive to the way that he's interacting in the world, to me, says that there's been a shift in closeness, like you're closer. So I'm not sure if you want to move away from that. But how do I start to tolerate that pattern, move out of that pattern, have that be more comfortable? I think that's communication with your spouse. And saying that this is really uncomfortable for me, and I know you're struggling with whatever this happens to be, but this is really uncomfortable for me. And what can I do to support you? What can we do to change this dynamic? But to me, that yin and yang, that responsiveness that goes on just means intimacy between a man and a woman. So marriage counseling, love it. Do it all the time, right? Joke at my office is I can keep everybody else married, but just not myself. I'll take it. I own it. You learn a lot by having problems in your life. So anyway, communication is key. Learning how to talk about things. When you are married, talk about the things. If you're an independent person because you feel like you have to be perfect and you can't ever come to anybody in your life with your need, and I have to be independent so I don't bother them, or I don't have a need, I don't have anything I have to complain about or talk about, that becomes a whole other issue. And women are often like that, right? We don't want to tell people that we have a need, or we're uncomfortable, or confrontation. No. Like, confrontation done well really resets a relationship. Confrontation is not bad. It's not bad. So if it's like you need to be able to say, hey, I'm uncomfortable, that's also women feeling like sometimes we're not very important. I could go deep with this question, like we're not very important, right? What we need is not very important. I will just take care of myself and never be a burden on anyone. That's a very lonely way to live. As a very independent woman, that can be very lonely, right? We all want to be the one that helps, but we're never the one that wants to be the one that needs the help. But that's not really authentic. And how do you grow? We're all about, how many people are like, I want community, I want to reach out to my people? Well, really good relationship is based on being vulnerable with each other. To say, here's my need, and that includes your spouse. So I think it's good communication, stepping into it, saying, I'm not doing well, I'm being bothered by your moods and affect, and solving the root problem. But maybe it's not always learning to be more independent. That's as far down as I'll go.
That's good. I was just going to say word. Really, really good. Yeah, exactly. We do have a couple of questions that have come in, and I just wanted to answer a couple of those really quickly. The question is, will contact information for these professionals be provided after the panel? Yes, absolutely. We actually have an information table set up. We've got business cards, we've got brochures and pamphlets and all of the things that you might need to book a service with one of these ladies, or just find out more about who they are and what their specialties are. So just wanted to answer that really quickly. And then a question for Pastor Shar. How do you tell the difference between a spirit of rejection and actual rejection? And how do you combat those?
That's a really, really good question. Boy, that was not on this piece of paper. Well, I think, okay, so here's the thing, is that every single one of you are going to be rejected. Yep. Period. It is inevitable. People are going to reject you 90% of the time. They reject you because they don't understand you, or they can't control you, so then they'll reject you, right? I think the spirit of rejection, I think it is, the difference is, I think, is if you feel like everybody's rejecting you. If you live in that state where it's, everybody's rejecting you, then there's a spirit that has attached itself that you believe that everybody's rejecting you. Does that make sense? Because every single one of us are going to be rejected. And I would say 100% of us, maybe 99.9% of us don't like to be rejected, which comes into that people pleasing, which comes into, I don't want to be rejected, so I want to please you. I want to do everything to make it okay so that you don't reject me. But the reality is that you're going to be rejected. So if you're living in a state of rejection where there is this hovering thing that is over you, that is, that it's like you carry, I think it probably is if you struggle with people pleasing, I bet that the spirit of rejection and people pleasing is probably related. It goes hand in hand. And I think that this is where this is so great, because the word in the Bible where it talks about, remember with the woman at the well, or the woman with issue of blood went and touched the hem of Jesus's garment. Jesus turns to her and says, daughter, you have been made well, you have been healed, you've been made whole. There's different translations. That word there, actually in the Greek, it's sozo. Okay, that word is sozo, which that word means Jesus looked at her and she wasn't only healed physically, but that word sozo means healed spirit, soul, and body. Okay, so when this is so wonderful, because we're talking about emotions, mental health, we're talking about physical health, we're talking about spiritual health. So a spirit of rejection is, I believe, tied with the people-pleasing type thing. So there's help for that. If you're struggling with that, I think an inner healing is probably what you need. It's tied to, normally 90% of the time, we look at a behavior, or you look at, say, like the fruit on a tree. So a behavior is an indication of something that goes way deeper, right? So you can't just pull the fruit off of a tree and expect the tree to die. The apples are going to come back the next season, right? So we want to go deep, and we want to find out, why am I struggling with this feeling or this spirit of rejection? It goes back someplace. I think, like Dr. Gehring was saying, it was just like, let's figure out where and why and get to that root. So it's the same.
I want to add to that. Can I add to that? Okay. So I just want to normalize, like, not everybody's going to like you. You're not everybody's cup of tea. Why are girls always like, they don't want to have coffee with me? I don't know. They want to have coffee with that other person. It's no diss on you, exactly. You know, I mean, like have you ever noticed, like, sometimes you're just drawn into relationship with certain people, like you meet them. I met Shar in 5 minutes and clicked, and we've just been sister friends almost since then. So it's like you just meet people and you're drawn into relationship with them, right? But it's not everybody. It's not everybody. And girls are always like, why don't they want to invite me? I don't know. You're just not their I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm not. The people who like me, but there's people that don't like me. I know it's unbelievable, but they are. Okay. Here's the other thing. Like, do you like you? Do you want to hang out with you? Because I've had women be like, nobody wants to invite me to anything. And I'm like, yep, I wouldn't want to invite you to anything either. You're really negative. You complain a lot. All you do is talk about you. I can never get a word in edgewise. Like, you know, and that's not in my office. I'm talking outside of my office. My office is all about you. So, you know, but are you nice to be around? Are you fun? Do you take interest in people? Do you bring conversation to the group, you know? And I think it comes, and I will say this a lot, it comes down to the relationship you have with yourself. Do you like you? Because if you like you and you walk into a room of people, you think other people will like you. It's really weird. You're like, well, I think they're going to like me. I like me, right? And so it comes down to the relationship you have with yourself. If you're walking around feeling rejected by everyone, I would say, are you rejecting you? Or do you like you? Do you want to hang out with you? Right? And it takes a long time to get to that place authentically, but not everyone's going to like you. Not everybody on the playground wants to play with you. It's okay. You can like who you want to like and find your people. Anyway, that's it.
That's good. Wendy, actually, while we have you chatting, there's another question that came in
it's so
for you.
hard.
So on the fly here, how do you make friends when you are feeling lonely and you aren't sure who to talk to?
We have to get uncomfortable. It is not comfortable to go talk to people you don't know. I've sit, and I'm sure you do too, right? You sit in your office and people are like, I want community. And you're like, well, let's try this place. And what kind of things do you like? Well, why don't you join that group or go to that group or go to the senior center or go invite some friends over to play cards. What kind of interest do you have? And it's no, that's uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable, people. Sitting where you're sitting, that's pretty comfortable. You have learned how to do the life that you have. You have learned how to cope with what you're coping with. Like, you're coping. Therapy is, and Jesus, thank you. It's all about not coping anymore. It's about saying, I want it more the good stuff in my life. And that is being really uncomfortable. And there was nobody in the Bible that was comfortable. Nobody was in there being like, audible voice of God telling you to do something. They're like, nah, I don't think so. You know, so when they don't want to do what we want them to do, we really shouldn't feel that bad, I guess. But it's uncomfortable to make new friends. It's uncomfortable to be vulnerable. It's uncomfortable to get out of your little space. But if you want something different, you have to do something different and be willing to be uncomfortable. Talk to some people you don't know. Go some places that you've never been. Do things alone. Learn to do things scared. It's okay to do things scared. It's okay to do things uncomfortable. Really is.
Awesome. Thank you. I decided that we're going to get into some nitty gritty. Is that okay? Okay, let's go. For Dr. Christie, this question says, I'm in my mid-40s. After almost a decade of no sexual activity and a complete hysterectomy, I'm getting married this spring. How can I prepare for the beauty of what the Lord wants me to have in marriage to the fullness that He wishes? Should I take estrogen, or are there more natural ways to encourage my body?
That's a great question, and that's not in this paper either. So, post-hysterectomy, your estrogen levels are Zero. Yeah. So what happens naturally then is that the vaginal tissue becomes very dry and very thin, and intimacy can become very, very uncomfortable. And for some people, almost impossible. So my recommendation would be, I personally think that estriol vaginal cream, which is a safe form of estrogen, is an amazing tool. So there's estradiol and there's estriol. Estriol is a form that's a safer form. So doing that twice a week can cause natural lubrication to come back. It helps the tissue become more stretchy, and it just helps intimacy be much more comfortable. So that, and occasionally pelvic physical therapy. Sometimes it requires a little bit more work, and there's some at least 2 excellent pelvic physical therapists in Chippewa and Eau Claire. So you can look into that.
Awesome, thank you. And sticking on the lines of intimacy, Becky, this one's for you. It says, I have been married for over 20 years, and I guess I'm one of the weird ones because I'm not a fan of having sex with my husband. Never have been. For the past 2.5 years, we have had a sexless marriage. My question is this: does not having sex with my husband have an effect on my general physical health? No doubt that it messes with my mental and emotional health, maybe even my spiritual health, but wondering about the physical side of things. At this point, it honestly scares me to think about being intimate with him again.
I'm going to pop in first. That's not that unusual. If I had a nickel for every time that came up in my office, I will tell you or there's a mismatch, at least in desire. That's really huge. So let it go.
Thank you, Dr. Gehring. I would absolutely second that. And whomever asked that question, thank you for being brave, because sex and intimacy for women it's a very, very complex thing. God created us so complex in some ways, and it is a very common challenge, whether it's that or something related to sex and intimacy. We are a body, soul, spirit being. We've been created that way, so it absolutely makes sense that it's going to affect us in all of those ways. And I think that it's really important to honor that you're scared, honor that you're frustrated. And I would really encourage any women who are struggling in this area to get some support, whether it's through your church, through a professional like Dr. Gehring, whether it's through therapy. Have these, and this can be hard depending on the dynamics in the relationship as well. So I want to be respectful of that too. If you have a husband who you can have those honest conversations with, where you're not placing blame on him or yourself, that it's a conversation of, here's just where I'm struggling. I do love you. I do respect you. This is an absolute concern I'm having. I just need to be vulnerable with you on that. So if that's not the case, if you can't have that type of conversation, if for whatever reason, trauma, things have happened in your life together or separately, please seek some support. That's so crucial, to not be walking that alone. And I don't know if anybody wants to add to that, ladies.
I'll chime in, of course. So
thank you, ma'am.
I know, right? So and I'm sure you're the same. We spend a lot of time in our office talking about sex, a lot. If you're going to do any marriage counseling, and I have a lot of women that come in and they're just like, what I wanted to add to that is, if you are a survivor of sexual trauma and that is different for everybody. Okay. People always think it has to be traumatic to be trauma. No, it doesn't. You define your own trauma. As a survivor myself, I really want to encourage women, if you have that history and you've gotten yourself through life, maybe some therapy, whatever, where you can kind of accept physical touch, but you have never really reclaimed the fullness of what sexual intimacy should be for you because of your trauma, I would really encourage you to see a therapist, because you have the right to reclaim what was taken from you. It should not just be about tolerating someone's touch. It should be about reveling in your partner's touch. So if you're still stuck in that, I've got some trauma back there, I can tolerate sex, it's okay, but you've never really worked through it to get yourself to that level, I would really encourage you to do it, because that's God's design for you, is to really own that and revel in that. And sexual intimacy for couples looks different. It doesn't always have to look the same, especially as you get a little bit older. Stuff changes for guys too, not just for girls, just saying. So it looks different for everybody. So when the person was talking about, I haven't had sex in 10 years, I'm getting remarried, what's intimacy look like? It does not have to look like just, I can't say it in church, but it can just look like intimate snuggling and touch. It can just look like sleeping naked. If you've ever done marriage counseling with me, I'm like, sleep naked, man. So it doesn't have to look exactly maybe what you're thinking. If you have a hard time having those conversations, find a therapist. We talk about it all day long. We're really okay with it.
Just one other thing I'll add, ladies, is that, and I want to be respectful of time, is expectations in marriages and relationships can kill things so quickly, because we have expectations and assumptions, and it's very hard for us to remember that our husband, our partner, has expectations and assumptions as well. So we have to learn. And sometimes we could be married 20 years, we could be married 2 years. We have to continue to learn and grow in our communication styles together, because that's so important. Those expectations will also kill intimacy if they're very different. So.
And also, we have to remember that sex it's actually a gift from God. It's God's gift to a couple when you have the union of marriage. It is given to us. So I think if we can rethink it, I think if there's trauma, I think just deal with the trauma. I think it really is. It is when... It's like even like my husband sometimes when he's annoying and irritating, which, sometimes it's, my mother-in-law's here, so I got to be careful because she thinks he's perfect. No, I'm kidding. But I have to remind myself that my husband is God's gift to me. So when, I'm getting older, menopause, you got all the things, sexual abuse and all the things, it's all adds up, right? But if we can just stop and think, and communication is key. I don't like communicate. I'm an introvert, so I'm done talking, so it's like I deal with people all day. I get home and please don't make me talk. But communication is huge, but just to remember that it is a gift from God. And God knows that it's different for women, it's different for men. Some women are like, oh my gosh, never. And some women are like, oh my gosh, all the time. And some men are like, never. It's just like, God's so funny. He should have his own comedy act, because he's the one that designed marriage. And then he's the one that gives sex as a gift. And then he's like, there. I don't want to. You don't want to. I don't want to. So anyway, so I think it is. Don't do nothing. That's the worst thing to do. Don't do nothing. Do something. Talk about it. Even if it's hard, if you can't talk to your husband about it, like Becky said, talk to somebody about it, but do something about it.
Yeah, so we're just gonna stay along those lines. And Wendy, this one's for you. It's regarding menopause and libido. This has been a big struggle for this person. It's like a switch that's switched off. She does what she can to make sure her husband feels loved, but they're both really missing the connection. Are there any tips, tricks, or supplements, suggestions, anything like that can help with this?
Well, I'm going to leave the supplements part of the questions to the supplement people, because that's not exactly my game. So I would say this, sex really creates intimacy in your marriage. It's what takes your relationship with your partner to something that you don't have with anybody else. It is one of the times, and I'm going to let the doctors correct me if I'm wrong, that a man's brain actually produces oxytocin and bonds to you. I mean, if you ever want to ask your husband for anything, ask him after sex, because he's going to say yes to whatever you want. It's true. He loves you so much for about 15 minutes after that. It's true, right? So, I can understand, right? Thank you. So I can understand libido and desire, right? But one of the things that happens is like men think about sex a lot more than women. You really just need to think about it a lot more. You want to up your libido? Think about it a lot more. No, it's okay. It's all right. I was so proud of her for saying sex earlier. Anybody else? Like, I'm just proud of her. So if you want to up your libido, think about having sex with your husband more. Think about being spicy. You don't have kids at home anymore. Get spicy. It doesn't have to be before bed. It can be in the middle of the day. It can be whatever you want it to be. It can be... They asked the question. So it sounds like what this person is saying is, I want to switch that switch back on because that was a good, beautiful part of our marriage, okay? And so maybe now it needs a little bit more buildup. Maybe it needs lingerie. Maybe it needs massage oil. Maybe it needs other things that have batteries. You know, there's just... Okay? It's okay. It's okay. I'm just saying, like, sex is designed to be beautiful. Can we stop talking about it like we're not supposed to talk about it? I mean, come on. And then it's all purity culture until you get married, and then you should have the libido of not somebody from the purity culture. Come on, right? And that has been a thing that more young couples come into my office about because they don't even know how a woman's body works. They don't know how each other's bodies work. And so then they're struggling with that. Like, can we just stop already? Right. I just don't get it. Why is it such a big thing to talk about? If you have lovely women in your life, it should be part of what you talk about. So how do you make your marriage spicy? You know, make it spicy. Think about sex more. Remember times when you've had great sex. Tell your spouse that sex is great.
Order pizza. With pepperoni. That's spicy.
Okay, I was like, order pizza, what? Is that like some sort of sign and signal? Gotcha. It's spicy. Yeah. There you go. I believe, but between a married couple, that there shouldn't really be anything off the table that you're both consenting to. So whatever that looks like to turn up the heat a little bit, turn up the heat a little bit. Just because you're older doesn't mean it can't be hot. Come on, right? Yeah.
I'll just add one other thing. I'm not funny like Wendy, but I just want to add to what she said. As we age and our bodies change, and sometimes our abilities change too, not just maybe like that, some of that piece. But I've worked with quite a few couples with somebody's acquired a disability, or there's a health problem that's come up, or maybe breast cancer for a woman or another type of cancer for a man, or illness. It's absolutely okay to, when we talk about switching things up and learning intimacy and that piece together in a different way as we age as well. And that doesn't mean it may not be the same, and you may need to grieve some of that. And then it's accepting and moving forward, like, here's what we can do with where we're at now. And that can be beautiful and super fun. And so I think that's important too.
Yeah, that's really good. And we just had another question come in, and I think that this is such an important thing to talk about with women, especially in the church, because a lot of us grew up with sex being taboo. We didn't talk about it. We didn't have conversations. We just were told to not have sex, and then when you get married, you get to have sex now. And so this person is wondering, what is biblically permissible in the bedroom? I think...
That's a trick question.
I think it'll be more about what's biblically not permissible.
I think that I don't know that it is I think it's a husband and wife, and it is between you and your husband. And I think that anything that you guys agree to, then it's between you two, because it's called intimacy, which means that there's two people, right? It's you and your husband, and then it's a gift from the Lord. So it's between you guys.
I think the agreed upon part is the key.
Yes. It has to be an agreement.
And that can be a very difficult conversation because sometimes people have different desires.
And there are things that you'll do that you see that they bring you closer together. And there are things that will not bring you closer together. And so I think really paying attention to that, and, some people think this is crazy, but, pray before sex, commit it to the Lord, bring the Holy Spirit into it, because if you want to have the best sex ever, God made it. And he will give you all types of ideas, different ones every time. So invite the Lord in, yeah.
I think I would just say it's more about maybe what shouldn't be there, right? Because that's kind of what we deal with sometimes in our offices. Pornography should not be. And there are too many times where I've had really good women come in and say, well, he really wants to watch that with me, so I've watched it, but I don't like it. No. If your husband asks you to do anything that is blatantly sinful, it's a no. Yes. Even if he asks you. I've had women, they want to bring another person in, that's a no. Pornography's a no. Anything that hurts you, anything that makes you feel uncomfortable is a no. Hard no. Hard no. And a man who is a good man who respects you, if it's something that you don't enjoy doing or having done, and vice versa, both ways, so it's about respect and having those communications. But just because he's your husband and he wants you and you want to please him does not mean that you need to do anything that hurts you or makes you uncomfortable, or is just blatantly sinful. Yes. Yeah. That's when you get to stand up and say no.
Agreed. And that brings us back to that people-pleasing question, right? It's so hard as someone who wants to please their husband to draw lines, and sometimes it's really important.
And ladies, just one other thing that I'm seeing a lot with women, and I don't want you to be feeling shame for this, is more and more women battling or being brave enough to share battling with some sort of pornography piece. And just how crucial that is, that we need to take care of ourselves there too. That is happening for women just as it is for men. It may look a little different, it may not. And so please, if that's you, do not battle that alone. Make sure you reach out. There is safety in there. You should not have to walk that road in a shameful way. Get some support and be empowered to learn how to heal from that. So
yeah, that's a true addiction. It's a dopamine hit, and it's
Absolutely.
A true addiction. It's
yeah.
as bad as cocaine.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies, for all that input. Shifting from the topic of sex, we are going to go to Dr. Brenda. This person is wondering why they keep having nightmares about their assault, and how can they prevent that? How can they heal from that and deal with that?
So, when anybody goes through a traumatic experience, your body goes into a state of really trying to protect itself from the experience. And sometimes people may even forget certain traumas that have happened to them. When you start to have nightmares, we call it re-experiencing. And some people have nightmares, some people have flashbacks, some people have, visions, or they feel like they're in the same place they were. That tells me that there is likely possibly some post-traumatic stress disorder still happening in your body from that event. And or that happened, or maybe if it's something that maybe you healed from, it is possible that something re-triggered it and that it came back to the fore. And so what I would recommend is one, to really gauge where your life is at that time. Are you in a stress position? Are certain things coming up that you haven't dealt with and that need to be dealt with? I think the most common thing that we all do is we try to move on and run away from events that are painful and kind of ignore them, and hopefully they won't show up. But then they will show up in different ways. They show up in your body. There's a book called Body Keeps Score, where you think that you're not dealing with it, but your body is constantly in a stressed state, releasing chemicals of stress into your brain. And, then you can wake up with nightmares and other things, and racing hearts and panic attacks. There are also medications that we can use to help with that. This is very common in the military population as well, who, they have really, really bad nightmares. And so as you're going through that treatment, as you're going through therapy, there are ways we can support you with medication as well.
Yeah, this is a critical question. We see it all the time in functional medicine because the body keeps the score. So many times when there's trauma from any reason, or just chronic stress, your limbic system gets activated. So that's the center part of your brain, which is kind of the black box recorder, and it's your protective. It's trying to protect you. And it remembers, like if you have a traumatic event, it could be you watched your kid fall off a horse, or it could be you were in a car accident, or you could have been assaulted. Your brain will record everything that occurred around then, and then strange things will set you off. For example, if the kid fell off the horse and there was a bluebird chirping right in your ear, every time you hear a bluebird, you might have a panic attack. It's like very strange links, but it's really important to know that you can retrain your brain. The limbic system will replay itself, but you can intervene and retrain your brain. There's a couple books that came to mind. One is called The Brain That Changes Itself. It's a really interesting book on neuroplasticity. There's one chapter, I will warn you, chapter 4, which talks about sexual deviance. It can be a little disturbing, just let you know that. And then there's another book that's called The Last Best Cure, and it's a woman who had autonomic nervous system and POTS, and turns out she had a very kind of abusive childhood. She had ACEs in her pocket. Has anyone heard of ACEs? That's adverse childhood events. And these ACEs she thought she had dealt with, but her body said no, and her autoimmune disease was perpetuated by that. So she had to deal with that in order to heal. It's very critical.
Because we know sometimes there's a barrier for getting services like wait lists or insurance barriers, things like that. There's also a really powerful faith-based group called Trauma Reboot Recovery. It's a 12-week course, and it's quite reasonable. I believe it's around $25 to get the field guide. They do them online across the country, and they have them in the local areas as well. It just depends. Sometimes there is a wait list, but they have them for military, for first responders, and for civilians. So if you're running into a barrier getting some support professionally, that can be a really good starting point for people too. So, yeah. Trauma Reboot Recovery. And you'll just look it up and you'll find it online. It's a really powerful course. So,
Becky, this question's for you actually, so you can keep that mic. The question is, what's your best advice for how to deal with a traumatic anger outburst, either in your kid, your spouse, or your friends?
very good question. Dr. Christie had talked a little bit about how the brain kind of like receives or perceives trauma, and it's all kind of decontextualized and mixed up like that. God created our brain so incredibly. The different parts of our brain, just to keep it real fast and simple. So we've got more of the like logic mind up here, and then kind of middle and back, we have that protective part of our brain that kind of goes into like, we're going to fight, we're going to run, or we're going to freeze. And a lot of times, well, a traumatic outburst would be when that brain, we kind of just flip into like that defensive, that fight mode, and kind of freak out, whether it's harming ourselves or harming something else, or just like lashing out, whatever it might be. There's definitely very different things for young children than a teenager, than an adult. I think one of the biggest things is if you have a loved one in your life or yourself who has trauma, make sure that you're getting good education about that. And that doesn't mean that you have to go somewhere specifically. It's do really good research online, talk to people you know, if you do, who are in the field or have experience, so that you know that you don't have to take that trauma reaction personally. Clearly there's going to be a difference if that person is struggling to the point where they're acting out and they're causing harm to you or to property, things like that. That's a very special case where there's going to need to be professional intervention of some sort. But get to know what trauma's like so you're not personalizing those trauma reactions. Be very mindful if someone's going through something like that you're not creating more unsafe energy as far as like yelling or shaming or trying to quiet and calm down. That really helps us feel better when someone tells us to calm down and chill out. That's super helpful for all of us. And you think about it, most of us aren't even in like a full-blown like trauma response. We're just ticked off or hurt or whatever, and we're like, yeah, that's super helpful. So imagine if you're struggling with something really significant like a trauma and someone's like, calm down, or yelling at you. So being mindful of not matching that energy, calming it down, slowing it down. We tend to have a sense of urgency to respond right away. If it's safe enough to back away and give that person their space and time, and give you space and time, because your brain is still kind of in a protection kind of mode too, whether that's going away and agreeing to take a break, praying, doing some breath work, other coping skill type exercises, just being mindful of your response to, and being able to come back later when that person's not in that state or frame of mind, and be able to talk about what needs to happen next, if there's a way to support, if there's professional help needed. This is a very complex question, so ladies, I don't know if anyone else wants to respond at all.
I would just say that when she was talking about our brain structure, that oftentimes that kind of fight, flight, or mode comes from a part of our brain that's a little pre-verbal. So sometimes for some people, touch is really, really good. The talking to them is just, you're not even talking. I mean, telling them to calm down is not doing anything. But a touch, a reassuring touch, can really be helpful if it's appropriate and you're not going to get hurt when they do that. I'm very CBT, so I'm very cognitive behavioral therapist, which is like your thoughts cause your feelings cause your behavior. So if someone's really stuck in a feeling, it's talking about what are you thinking, and then changing the thought will usually change the feeling and usually change the behavior. So if you're looking at wanting to de-escalate something, it's what are you thinking about that's causing this reaction, and then challenging that thought or replacing it with a different thought will usually get you a different feeling.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. We're going to move on to a question for Pastor Shar here. This person says that they're fighting with their relationship with God, and at times they feel like there's no way he could do all of these things to them. So what's something you do that makes you believe even after so much bad has happened?
Yep. That's a good one. I think it really goes back to that trust in God. When I read this question, it It's in blue, so I didn't have it early. I just had it when I got here. But I thought of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. If you guys remember that in Daniel chapter 3. The three guys, they were brought to the fiery furnace, and they said, if you don't bow down to these idols, then you're going to be thrown into this furnace, right? Well, I love the reaction of what these three guys said. Is they looked at the king and they said this. They said, we know that our God, so they knew, listen, I know that my God is more than able to deliver me from this fire. And then they said something so remarkable. They said, even if he doesn't, we're still not going to bow down. There's that something that we have to solidify within us, is that even if he doesn't, ladies, listen, even if he doesn't, everything he's already done is good enough. He took your shame on the cross. He forgave you for every sin you've committed and every sin that you will ever commit. He rose from the dead to give you the Holy Spirit. The power that raised him from the dead lives and dwells inside of you. So even if he doesn't, are you still going to serve him? Are you still going to trust him? That's really what it has to come down to, is even if he doesn't.
The next questions, it's kind of like a two-part question for you, Dr. Christy. This person's wondering if you at your clinic work with women with PCOS and women trying to conceive.
Yes, we work with a lot of women who struggle with PCOS and conception issues. So there's lots of things that we can do for this. There's so many factors. So functional medicine, I did take notes, by the way. And I actually made little like handouts, but I didn't print them. But if anyone wants them, I can actually give them to you, and then anyone who wants them can have them. But so functional medicine, PCOS, the primary thing that we think about is glucose intolerance or blood sugar issues. So one of the first steps, it's something simple that people can do, is just to remove sugar and decrease carbs in their diet. That can help tremendously. Insulin resistance is very common. There's a supplement called berberine. Berberine is something that can help you with insulin resistance. There's also another supplement people might have heard of called inositol. It's a vitamin that you could take, and those two things have on occasion turned PCOS around. There's other things. We want to look at hormones. So as a functional medicine doctor, I would look at your hormone levels and try and help normalize them. We would also want to be looking at your gut. So it sounds strange, but there's some theories that polycystic ovary syndrome is actually because of leaky gut first. So if you have a lining that is leaking toxins into the abdominal cavity, that's where your ovaries live. And then so this goo, it's just kind of sitting in a toxic soup, and then the ovaries start to misfire. So that, healing your leaky gut is something that's really important. And then it goes back to things like removing toxins and working on stress. So those are some things. As far as fertility, we have lots of other tips and tricks, but getting PCOS under control is a big one.
Yeah, so the second part to this question is actually regarding some of the things you've answered already, but I'm just wondering for them about specific foods that they can try that would help mitigate those symptoms. And then also, they are saying that they have found themselves in a vicious cycle of struggling to lose weight. Mm-hmm. And another question actually came in about losing weight as well. So maybe you could offer some insight there.
Yeah, that's a very tricky question. So the losing weight, basically, it comes down to carbs. People think it's, this is complicated. Okay, we'll start with the easy one. Things that they can do food-wise that can help. Cruciferous veggies can help. So that's cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and cabbage. those things all contain some nutrients that can help you deal with hormones better. There is also an extract from those. If you don't like those veggies, you can do DIM, diindolylmethane, and that's an extract from those veggies. And that can help your body process hormones better. Vitamin D is super, super critical. So this is something, it helps remove inflammation. It helps your immune system. So if we can't get it September to March, or May, actually, we can't get it. You could be out buck naked trying to impress your husband, and you won't make vitamin D. But, yes.
But the rest of the year.
The rest of the year, that's a strategy.
It's a twofer.
Twofer for sure. So we do want you to get some vitamin D. Fish oil. So if you like salmon, wild caught, it must be wild caught. It cannot be farmed, but wild caught salmon can help. So can sardines and those little kippered snacks that stink really bad, but they can be helpful. Okay, so that's the easy thing. Now the hard part is the weight loss. So weight loss is very complicated because there's a lot of shame associated with it. There can be eating disorders associated with it. There's just many things. We typically try and start with a very low carb diet that can help break cravings and can get people on the right path. But I'll be honest, it usually is not a quick, easy answer. We usually if people are stuck, we usually want them to make appointments with our health coaching team because there's just so many facets that we have to address. Sorry, that's kind of a cop-out, but there's no easy answer.
Yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. Okay. Our next question is for you, Dr. Brenda. It says, so many people nowadays are struggling with depression and anxiety. Sometimes therapy by itself does not work. Sometimes medications by themselves don't work, and a lot of those medications have bad side effects. So what are some alternative treatments that you would recommend?
This is very common. I encounter this every day, where individuals will come to me and they've been in therapy for 5 years and they've done everything they know how to do. They're exercising, they're eating as well as they can. They are, making themselves do things even when they don't want to do it, and then they just cannot lift their depression. And, this is also a multifaceted question. I'll say this though, right? When you're depressed and the depression has gone on for so long, there are certain chemicals in the brain, in the body that are released that actually start to suppress the brain and suppress the brain's activity. So you may be doing all these things to raise your mood, but it's almost like you're walking through molasses, like you're really fighting hard. Now, depression, the therapy, you've tried it, the medication, you've tried it. And this is really where I want to highlight, transcranial magnetic stimulation. It's a TMS. It stands for transcranial. T is transcranial, M is magnetic, and S is stimulation. And to simplify it, what it is gentle magnetic pulses that are delivered to your brain to help wake up a sleeping brain. This is by far one of the most effective treatments for depression that we have currently. It surpasses everything that we have on the market. The most remarkable thing about it is that it works so well with minimal to no side effects. And that is something that with medication is a struggle. I do treat people with medication, and we always try to get the best one for them, but without, there will be side effects sometimes, and, some of the side effects are not so pleasant. And so TMS is really remarkable, and how it works is that the stimulation, the magnetic pulses that are gently pulsating in your brain, they're reawakening the neurons there. So the neurons are starting to fire. The neurons are starting to make the chemicals that they're supposed to make, the serotonin, the norepinephrine, the dopamine. And not only that, because our brains are so remarkable, the neurons also start to make chemicals that help grow the brain, help make the brain connections and the networks rejuvenate and revitalize. So it's so transformative. I mean, the studies that are looking at it are almost right now wanting to, see if they can make it a first-line treatment. So that's how amazing it is. Now, I do want to say this, right? Because you do want to also kind of look back. When you wake up the brain and it's going, you want to make sure, were the things that were a problem before still a problem, right? And that could be, was your gut not working well, where you had digestive problems? Is that fixed, right? For example, were you eating the right types of nutrients? One thing that I encounter very commonly with women is their very low protein intake. And when you come to my office, I'll tell you to eat 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. So if you're 150 pounds, that's 150 grams of protein. And why is that important? The protein gets broken down into amino acids, and the amino acids are the precursors for many of the neurotransmitters, and you can't get it outside of your diet, a lot of these things. And so when you're eating maybe a sandwich or, an egg, and as mothers, people forget to eat. It's like you eat last after everybody has gone, and then not only are you eating last, you're eating leftovers, right? and after the children are gone and they're out of the door, you're kind of still doing the same thing. So, I think that there are things that we can pay attention to get that system working well. Yeah.
100% agree. The TMS, I think, is going to be life-changing for many people. But going back to the basics and eating more protein and having good fats, don't be afraid. Your brain is like 80% fat, right? We need to have good fats. So red meat is not bad for you. I'd much rather you have a steak than have a sandwich, for sure. The other thing, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but I think anxiety and depression have been a lot worse since a certain virus went through the community. So that's something that we also would look at. And is this a long COVID thing? And sometimes it just takes a little work to try and clear COVID spikes. Yeah.
Yeah, we did have one question come in asking if TMS is only for depression or if it can treat other imbalances.
Yeah, so this is a beautiful thing about TMS, is that because it is stimulating the neurons in the brain, any type of disorder that deals with neurons, with the nervous system, with the brain, can be treated by TMS. Now, currently, and there's data with anxiety, with PTSD. Currently, it was FDA approved for depression in 2008. It was FDA approved for anxious depression, I want to say in 2021. It was FDA approved for OCD in 2022. 18, and it's FDA approved for depression in 15 and older in 2022. It has been shown to help with Parkinson's disease. It has been shown to help with ADHD, even in some cases, children on the spectrum. So it's really, really remarkable. Now, insurance will only cover it for the FDA-approved indications. And so that is a limitation. You still can get the treatment, but then you'll have to pay out of pocket for it if it's for the outside of FDA approval indications. But this is the thing. A lot of people who have chronic medical issues have depression. Yeah. So, And so what I have noticed even in my practice as I treat patients, that yes, I'll be treating them for depression, but because you are stimulating that area of the brain, it actually reactivates the whole circuit. And that, they came in for depression, and depression, actually we start to see response within the second week, which is awesome because the medications take a lot longer. But then we also start to see other things, like the person will say, you know what, I'm thinking clearer. Like, I'm not forgetting things. Like, I used to forget appointments all the time. I'm not forgetting them anymore. I'm not as anxious. I'm actually a lot calmer now. So it's a lot. It's amazing, but yeah. Yes. So there is, I have some information out there for anybody who's interested. They're kind of out there on the table. There's more information you can look into.
And just a quick, for those of you who are more toward the Eau Claire area, there are a couple of clinics in Eau Claire who offer it as well.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. So I just wanted to say we have 5 minutes until 8:30. So I wanted to let you ladies know that if you need to go at 8:30, you are invited to scoot your booty out there, pick up some information and head home. But if you are able to stay for the handful of questions that we have left, you're also invited to do that. We're probably going to go to 8:45 if that's okay. But if you have to get up and go, like, feel free to do that. I just wanted to let you know. So for Becky, this question, it says, how do you work through the emotional toll of estranged adult children limiting or controlling time allowed with grandchildren?
So I'm gonna lean on some of the ladies up here for some of this too, because this is a really painful question for people, especially these days. We know, especially in the last couple generations, there's more and more parents helping raise their grandbabies. And there's more and more stress in families than ever before. Some of it, I think, first is there are going to be some families where this is primarily on the adult children who have an issue with their parents. So there's that piece. A part that's hard to look at sometimes is there a part of us as the grandparent, grandma, grandpa, do we need to take ownership anywhere? Are there things that perhaps that we have done as far as like having a critical spirit or a judgmental spirit toward their parenting styles if they don't align with what we believe, or if there's a lot of things where maybe families, they're not sharing the same faith right now. There may be things as far as like organic versus not, where, and maybe people think, oh, that's not a big deal. But for many families, these are very divisive types of different beliefs that families have. So being mindful of those things in addition to like mental health concerns, I encourage people to seek God if you have a relationship with him and see, okay, God, is there anything in me that I need to be working on to start mending this difficult, estranged relationship? And some of it, all we can do is give it to God and trust him and keep praying. I've seen crazy things happen in families after years where there's been reconciliation. So I say, please do not lose hope. Other things I would say is continuing to get support, whether it's professionally or not, talking about these things in a respectful way toward your family. if there's ways that you can stay in communication with the kiddos. If you're not allowed to have much communication with the kiddos, make sure you're writing, even if you can't send it, if you're not allowed to give it to them. Those kids are going to turn 18 and become adults one day, and God does incredible things sometimes. All the time he does, but with this piece, be writing to them, be keeping cards, set up a savings account for them, have little gifts or things over the years that you have for them, so that when they can make a decision about a relationship with you someday, that they know they've never been forgotten, even if you guys can't have a relationship. I've seen kids that's just so precious for them when they get older, and it's a way that you can take action and still be a part of their lives without fully being there. But I'm going to turn it over to whoever else has some thoughts.
That's perfect. I think that's beautiful. A message in a bottle, right? They can open it later, and it means so much.
Awesome. Dr. Christie, I'm going to rapid fire some questions at you. We have tons of stuff coming in, so just bear with me here. The first questions I have are, do you recommend creatine for women in menopause? And then the follow-up question, it's not related, but I'm just going to ask it. It says, what can you do for a hiatal hernia and leaky gut?
Okay, creatine, yes, I think creatine is great for anyone in perimenopause or menopause. It helps with muscle mass, it helps with bone strength, it helps your brain, helps your mitochondria. So I think creatine is great. It's usually dosed about 3 to 5 grams a day. Oftentimes right after exercise, it would be an ideal time to do it. The only caveat is if you have pretty severe kidney disease, you're going to want to talk to your doctor about it. You want to check a kidney function test beforehand and then start the creatine and then check it about a month later just to make sure there's no strain. But for most people, 3 to 5 grams, very safe. So the next question was hiatal hernia. So hiatal hernia is where your stomach gets kind of pulled up into your chest. And there's several techniques to help pull that down. So you can see a chiropractor who does visceral manipulation. They dig their little fingers in there and they pull your stomach down. I haven't tried it myself, but I hear it's a little bit uncomfortable. However, once it's out, it feels much better. You can try a self-adjustment if you want to. First thing in the morning, when you get up in the morning, drink a glass of warm to slightly hot water. You don't want it hot, but real warm water. And then you stand up on your tippy toes and you jump down onto your heels. So boom. Boom. Do that a few times. You sometimes with that full stomach and that warm water can relax things and reduce your hernia all on its own. So that's a little bit less painful way of doing it. One interesting thing about hiatal hernias is that there is a link between that and stress, because if your vagus nerve, which is your calm, rest and restore nerve, is turned off, then everything gets tight, right? We just get all stiff and tight. And then your stomach, your esophagus kind of pulls up and everything just pulls up into your chest. And that's not a very pleasant feeling. So working on vagal nerve exercises can be very helpful. One really easy one is humming. Another easy one is gargling. So every time you brush your teeth, you gargle for 30 seconds or a minute. You can do some other vagal nerve exercises with your eyes. There's a whole series of vagal nerve exercises, but that can be very helpful. And then just addressing the stress. So that's that vague. So leaky gut. That's not as easy. Leaky gut starts with addressing your stress, but there's many things that could cause it. So ibuprofen can cause it. Antibiotics can cause it. So there's lots of things that can trigger leaky gut. I recommend a good probiotic, a prebiotic. We can do things like glutamine to help heal the lining of the gut. There's a product called Ion Gut Health, which is humic and fulvic acid, and that also heals the gut. Colostrum can be very healing. And then we do stool studies. So to try and really figure out why there's problems or what's going on, we can do a stool study. We also have a new device at our clinic called an F-scan, which can kind of scan your body and tell us if there's an imbalance of microbes, like which kind of bacteria, virus, parasites, or fungi are overgrowing. And then we have something called the Firefly, which is a photobiomodulation unit. So it's a light, it's red, infrared, and blue light, and it's going to flicker at the same exact frequency as the bug that's bugging you. And what happens when the lady sings at the right tone? She's got a crystal glass. It shatters. So we can't write that, but that happens to the bugs too. So just saying that there's things that we can do. So that's just a few things.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. I have one more question for you, and then we'll move on to the next question here. This person's wondering if you have treated patients with elevated thyroid antibodies, and if so, have you had successful results?
So elevated thyroid antibodies are an autoimmune phenomenon, and so there's many things that we look at. We try and add the things you need and remove the things that aren't good for you. Chronic infections can sometimes cause elevated antibodies. Heavy metals, mold toxins, those things can cause it. Gluten. So if anyone has elevated antibodies for their thyroid, we recommend going gluten-free for at least 30 days, preferably 2 months, because if we can get the antibodies for the gluten to go down, many times the autoimmune, the antibodies for your thyroid will go down. So there's something called molecular mimicry. There's a little piece of gluten that for some people looks very much like their thyroid. And so if you have a leaky gut and you're making antibodies for the gluten, then it's going to cross-react and you're going to attack your own thyroid. So that's a simple tip that, and if we catch like an early hypothyroidism, we really can reverse it. So people can actually have their thyroid normalize. If you've had hypothyroidism for 2 decades, it's unlikely that your thyroid that's been attacked for a long time will come back online fully. However, it's still worth doing, because if we address your autoimmune disease, 2 risks with autoimmunity. One is another autoimmune disease, and the second is cancer. So if we can address the root cause of what caused the thyroid to be attacked, we can hopefully prevent other things.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This question came in for any of you. So the question is, as a recent widow with multiple children between ages 4 to 14, how do I move forward in life, and how do I help my kids manage their lives moving forward?
One day at a time. I mean, that's a big load. Ask for help. Surround yourself with people who love you. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and ask for help again. Be vulnerable with people. I mean, that's not an easy path. Find a good support system, a good support community. Find good mentors for your kids. People that are willing to invest in their lives, or good counselors, either one. That's a big road ahead.
Yeah, and I think as the mom, we're so busy taking care of the kids that we can forget about ourselves. You know, your kids lost their father, but you lost your husband. And so there's a lot of emotional things, and you know, us women, we got to be strong, because you can't not be strong, right? Well, by doing that, I think it really can cause, like we've been talking about here, not dealing with those things in yourself can cause a lot of physical issues, can cause a lot of other issues, right? So make sure that you take care of yourself, spirit, soul, and body. Find somebody maybe to watch the kids for a little bit, and make sure that you find that place where you can get that, not necessarily freedom, but get the fun, and you know what I mean, live a little bit, so that you don't become numb and just going through the motions, right? You want to make sure that you get the healing that you need also, because if you have to take care of you so that your babies can be taken care of properly, right?
If you are the loved ones, friends, family of this woman or any other woman in family going through something like this, something that can be really helpful for families is we often have this servant's heart where we want to help and love, where we say things like, let me know what you need. I'm here to help, those types of things. Oftentimes whether it's traumatic loss or just grief and loss, it's so heavy and so hard. You can't even put two thoughts together oftentimes. So if you can tell so-and-so like, hey, I can make you supper every Saturday, or hey, we can do a Facebook GoFundMe for you. We just need your permission. Or hey, I can come over and do your laundry or take your laundry for you on Wednesdays. If you can make it specific to what you can do for someone, that takes so much weight off of somebody, because you don't even know what you need. You're just surviving day to day oftentimes, if you've ever been through something like that. So if you can make it easier on that loved one, that can help so much to do it that way specifically. And also, if you are the loved ones of an individual going through this, make sure that you will have really good intentions, most of us, but life for the rest of us moves on really fast. And so set reminders in your calendars on your phone, or if you're a paper person, check in on that person in a month, check in on them in 3 months. Make sure that if you love them like that, do that, because your life is going to keep flying by and theirs is going to stay very stuck for a while. So those can be so helpful when you're so desperately lonely and someone just all of a sudden out of the blue, like 6 months later, is like, hey, I've been thinking about you. And, say that person's name who passed away to them, make them real to them still. So
That's beautiful. The book I referenced, The Last Best Cure, is by a woman who was an 11-year-old whose dad died suddenly and unexpectedly. And mom understandably spiraled into depression and was just trying to get through the day. And so it's an interesting look at how loss can affect someone long-term, and also how you can overcome that. So it's very inspiring, and I think that it might be useful so that if the parent, this is a mom who now has these little kids, how do you understand what they're going through and how to help them, as well as help yourself? It might be a great tool.
Yeah, thank you, ladies. I am feeling like we're at a good point to wrap up. There was one question asking if this panel is being recorded, and we are recording. So after, I believe Brandon is going to take care of the editing. So after he edits that, he'll upload it and we'll distribute the link on the panel page as well as on our church social media. So I would say stay tuned for that. I don't know how long that typically takes, but give him grace, he's busy. So after he gets that uploaded, I will be sure to post that anywhere and everywhere for you ladies to get access to. There was also a question saying if there are questions that aren't covered, would the panel be willing to answer those questions and have them posted somewhere? I didn't even consider that. So if you ladies would be willing, I can email you the additional questions, and then we can post those on the event page as well, if that's okay. There were a gazillion questions for Dr. Christie regarding tons and tons of women's health things, which is understandable because it's not often that we get audience with a doctor. So anyways, so I think that we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up, knowing that these questions will be answered eventually. So anyways, ladies, thank you so much for your time. Yeah, so ladies, if you don't mind, you could continue standing if that's okay. But as we were doing this panel, I really felt like the Lord was prompting me to actually pray for these ladies, for growth, for their business, for growth in their ministry, for all of those things. So if you wouldn't mind just extending a hand towards them with me, please. And feel free to pray out loud if you'd like, but I'm just going to pray in the microphone as well. So Lord, we just thank you so much for these for these mentors, for these women who are literally in the trenches with us, God. I thank you so much for their businesses, God, and I just ask for increase and for growth, Lord. I thank you, God, that they are literally tearing down the walls of hell every single day. And so I just ask, God, that you place a hedge of protection over them, over their hearts, over their brains, God. I thank you, God, for the community of women that they have surrounding them. And if they don't have one, God, I thank you that you're going to bring the exact women that they need so that they too can thrive, so that they too can have an impartation. So God, I thank you. I thank you for this time. And I ask, God, that all of the wisdom that you've deposited into us through them, God, would be increased and would multiply, God, so that we can continue to change our community and change the women around us.
Yeah. Hello? So, we talked about a lot of things tonight, and I just want to thank, all the panelists, and especially Becky and Dr. Gehring. This is the first time I've met them also, so I really appreciate you guys coming and saying yes to this. This has been amazing. But we've talked about a lot of things here, and so we have a team of ladies that are going to be up front here, that if you want prayer for anything that was talked about, anything that you're struggling with, we talked about autoimmune disease, a little bit. We've actually had 2 women in our church that have actually, 3 people in our church that got completely healed through prayer. So there is that. There's that, and then there's this, right? So it's all good. But anyways, if you need any prayer, we're gonna have the women come up front, the ministry team come up front, and if you want prayer, just come up front for that. But again, ladies, thank you for coming out tonight. Please check out the resource table out there. And if there's any questions that you guys have after tonight, please feel free to email the church or email somebody, and they'll get it to us. God bless you.